Welcome to The Explainer. I want you to picture this. It's Christmas Eve, 1898. You're standing in the freezing cold on a snowy night in Paris, right at the bottom of Rue Lepic. And if you know Paris, you know this is literally the steepest street in the entire city, winding its way straight up the daunting hill of Montmartre. Idling in the cold is this small, kind of strange mechanical contraption, and there's a group of shivering, curious onlookers gathered around it. What happens next on this hill doesn't just cap off a fun festive evening, it actually ignites a century-long legacy. Today, we're diving into the incredible origin story of a machine that sparked a global automotive empire.
So, what exactly was about to happen on that icy Parisian street? Well, a 19-year-old kid named Louis Renault had gathered his friends together for the holidays, and he was getting ready to attempt an unprecedented mechanical feat. He basically bragged to his friends that the small motor car he built himself could actually conquer the massive incline of Rue Lepic. Now, you have to remember, at a time when the motor car was a brand new, totally experimental invention, climbing a hill that steep was considered an incredible, almost impossible challenge.
The machine he was driving was called the Voiturette, which simply translates to little car. Produced between 1898 and 1903, the Voiturette was the literal starting point of an entire automotive empire. It was the very first automobile ever produced by what would soon become a globally recognized brand. But before it was a massive brand, it was really just the ambitious passion project of one highly driven teenager.
Section 1. Engineering the first Voiturette, the mechanical genius of a 19-year-old.
Let's back up a year to 1897. 19-year-old Louis was completely fascinated by the recent invention of the motor car. He was working as a draftsman at Delaunay Belleville, which was actually a former boiler-making company that was just starting to dabble in car making, and he decided to take on a massive project. But he didn't build his car entirely from scratch. Instead, he took an existing piece of machinery, a Dion Bouton tricycle, and fundamentally re-engineered it. He managed to convert this three-wheeled vehicle into a stable, four-wheeled quadricycle. But honestly, adding a fourth wheel wasn't his real stroke of genius. The true breakthrough was hidden inside the mechanics.
What's really fascinating here is the profound mechanical innovation Louis brought to the table. He fitted his quadricycle with a totally custom invention, a 3-speed gearbox plus reverse. And the kicker? The third gear was in direct drive. Why does that matter to us? Well, prior systems were just terribly inefficient. This new direct drive system drastically cut down energy losses and significantly increased the vehicle's power output, all while using the exact same engine. It was an absolute leap forward in automotive engineering, and again, it was created by a teenager.
Section 2. The Christmas Eve Joyride, Rue Lepic and the Climb to Success.
So, armed with his new direct-drive gearbox, Louis brought his friends to the bottom of Rue Lepic, fired up the engine, and effortlessly cruised up that steep street without breaking a sweat. He proved its incredible climbing ability and exceptional fuel economy to everyone watching. Let's look at what made the Type A capable of this. It was incredibly lightweight, tipping the scales at just 200 kilograms. It was powered by a Dion Bouton single-cylinder 273cc engine, producing exactly 1.75 horsepower. Now sure, that sounds tiny to us today, but it was enough to push this little car to a top speed of about 32 kilometers per hour, or roughly 20 miles per hour. It was modern, easy to drive, and it worked flawlessly.
And here is the craziest part of the story. The impact of that single joyride was instantaneous. His friends were so blown away by what they just saw that 12 of them ordered a model of the car right there on the spot. Literally that very night, Louis Renault had a dozen firm orders for his invention. Just like that, his hobby had officially become a business.
Section 3. The Renault brothers unite, from prototype to production.
Now, Louis quickly realized he needed help if he was going to scale up from a single prototype to actual production. So, he filed a patent for his direct-drive gearbox early in 1899, and then he turned to his family for some much-needed business sense. Just 2 months after the Christmas Eve drive, he partnered with his brothers, Marcel and Fernand, to create the Société Renault Frères, the Renault brothers company. Marcel and Fernand were absolutely crucial here, because they brought years of serious business experience from working in their father's highly successful textile company. Oh, and fun fact, long before the famous diamond logo we all know today, their very first emblem was a coat of arms featuring 2 R's for the brothers.
Section 4. Evolution, Type A to G, Rapid Automotive Advancement.
The timeline we're looking at here is just staggering. In 1898, we have the Type A. Just 1 year later, in 1899, they dropped the Type B. And by 1900, the Type C is rolling out. In the span of just 3 years, this company was fundamentally altering the shape and function of the automobile. They produced roughly 80 vehicles between 1898 and 1899 alone, which was massive for the time.
The jump from the Type A to the Type B really shows you how fast practical design was moving. The Type A was the simple, open-air, two-passenger buggy. But with the Type B in 1899, Louis Renault essentially invented the modern sedan concept. He took the Voiturette chassis and just slapped a closed roof and two doors onto it. Yeah, it added weight, bringing it up to 350 kilograms, but it completely transformed early cars from strange exposed contraptions into something that actually looks recognizable to us today.
Fast forward to 1900, and they bring the Type C to the Salon de l'Automobile in Paris. This was a huge milestone. It was the very first time Renault Frères presented themselves as true legit automobile makers to the wider public. The Type C was their first four-passenger car, and it introduced a major mechanical upgrade, water cooling. After that, models like the Type D and E would utilize upgraded 5CV engines, constantly pushing the boundaries of what these tiny cars could do.
Section 5. The ultimate iteration, the 1902 Type G.
So let's look at the specs for the 1902 Type G and see how it builds on everything before it. The Type G kept the same chassis style as the D and E, but with vastly superior mechanics. The engine was upgraded to an 864cc water-cooled Didion motor that pumped out 8 horsepower. It featured these very distinctive enlarged twin side-mounted radiators to handle the heat. And, maybe the best part for the driver, it featured front and rear semi-elliptical springs, which actually made the Voiturette quite a comfortable ride for the era.
Now, you take that new comfort, combine it with the punchy power of the Didion engine, and suddenly the Voiturette was perfect for a completely new cultural phenomenon, automobile racing. Back then, racing was a brand new fad. The drivers weren't sponsored professionals. They were usually wealthy gentlemen, or their sons, just looking for an adrenaline rush. And Renault's Voiturettes were right at the front of the pack, dominating races all across France and Europe.
To put the sheer speed of these early races into perspective, these guys were routinely pushing their Voiturettes past 35 miles per hour, about 56 kilometers per hour. That is wildly fast for an open-air carriage bouncing along primitive dirt roads. And people were testing the absolute limits of human speed. In 1901, the ultimate land speed record for a motor car was set at a staggering 105.88 kilometers per hour.
The Renault brothers weren't just building these cars, they were avidly racing them, proving their engineering chops out on the track. In the 1899 amateur Paris-Trouville race, the Type A powered Louis and Marcel to an absolutely dominant finish. Louis took first place, and Marcel came right behind him in second. It was a spectacular debut that proved to everyone that their direct-drive gearbox was a massive competitive advantage.
Section 6. Legacy of the Voiturette, from 1902 to today.
So, what happened to these pioneering machines? Well, today, surviving Voiturettes are highly prized pieces of history. For instance, an original 1902 Type G was painstakingly restored back in the year 2000. The restorers were super careful to keep all the original metalwork completely intact to preserve its historical integrity. However, they did have to replace much of the 100-year-old wood, simply for safety reasons, to make sure the car could actually be driven on modern roads without falling apart.
And as you might guess, these surviving cars command incredible respect and value today. That restored, vintage, rally-ready 1902 Type G has an estimated auction value of somewhere between £60,000 and £80,000. These aren't just untouchable museum pieces. They're functional, highly valuable links to the absolute dawn of the automotive age, fully ready to be taken out for a Sunday drive.
But the legacy here isn't just about preserving old metal. It's about the enduring nature of the idea itself. Think about the core concept of the Voiturette. A small, efficient, two-seater vehicle designed for zipping around the city. That idea was actually revived over a century later. In 2011, the brand launched the Twizy. It was this fully customizable, all-electric city vehicle that totally echoed the original spirit of the Type A. And it was a hit. It became the best-selling electric model in 2012, proving that a truly brilliant design concept never really goes out of style.
We're going to wrap up today with this thought. History remembers the night of 24 December 1898 as marking the start of Louis Renault's automotive adventure. What started as a 19-year-old snowy joyride to show off to his friends on a steep Parisian hill transformed into a century of incredible engineering, racing, and mass production. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What simple, bold ideas are being tested in small workshops right now that might entirely shape the next 100 years of our world? Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring.